Good morning, this is Stephanie Rodales, Special Projects and Event Coordinator of the Longview Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to welcome you to today's informational webinar presented in partnership with the Longview Chamber and Datamax. I'd like to begin with a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available online at longviewchamber.com. And for those of you on the line, you will receive an email later today with a link to listen to it again and or share with others, as well as a PDF of the presentation. Next, there are a couple features that I'd like to make you aware of. You will be muted throughout the presentation, but you will be able to listen to our presenter and see the visual presentation provided. If you do not see the green title screen at this time, please look to your toolbar for the Go To Webinar icon. It looks like a flower, and if you click on that, it'll pop up the display screen for you. Lastly, even though you are muted, this will be an interactive webinar, so please find the question section on the right-hand menu. You can type in this feature with any questions you want to ask of the presenter throughout the presentation. Questions will be answered when the presentation has concluded. This is also where you may send a message for the organizer, making them aware of any issues with the broadcast. Today we have an informational webinar on cybersecurity for business people minus the geek speak. Our industry professional is Justin Huffaker, the VP of Strategic Technology for Datamax. He's with us today to provide easy to understand cybersecurity training and steps you can take at an individual level to increase information security. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to Justin.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, a bit of housekeeping. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it is up.
Very well. Well, thank you for joining me and taking time out of your day. My name is Justin Huffaker. As Stephanie mentioned, I am with Datamax. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Technology. I celebrated this summer 22 years with Datamax. Information technology has always been a passion for me, not just because of the cool things it does, but because of the way that it can uniquely empower business to accomplish business executives. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about technology today, not in a technical way, but in a plain English, normal conversation way, because there's a lot of things that everyday business people need to know about information security. And this information has been developed over time. For 22 years, I've been involved with supporting technology for clients. So I've seen a lot of things happen in the field, I've seen a lot of different scenarios. And one of the things that has been helpful in the past, and I think will always be helpful, is learning lessons and sharing lessons with others so that mistakes are not repeated and they can be avoided. So before we get into it, I do want to thank the Longview Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity. We enjoy the relationship with Longview, with the Longview Chamber, and are really grateful for the opportunity to present this morning. So thank you. All right, I think it's appropriate to begin the presentation with this slide because it visually represents information security. We have, what we have is a structure surrounded by a wall. Now this is a video game picture, but you know, a lot of times, whether it's information security, we think about building a wall, whether it's home security or gated communities, we think about a wall to keep unwanted people out. But we can spend $1 million on a home security system. But if we open the front door for the bad guys, we're going to let them right in, and that $1 million security system is not going to do us any good at all. So we're not going to be able to have the kind of security that we want until we recognize that whether large or small, We all are targets until we accept ownership for the security of our technology, accept the fact that we are responsible for it. We also should realize we're not powerless. There's a lot of things we can do to protect ourselves, and there's a lot of things that we do that essentially are, as this picture indicates, opening the door for the bad guys to walk right in. So the final thing that we have to do as human beings, as individuals, as employees of companies, is we have to accept accountability for a certain amount of responsibility in protecting ourselves. There are steps we can take. We have to ask questions. We have to adopt some measured skepticism, and we can't be lazy. We have to be vigilant. All right. Let's see. All right, cybercrime. Cybercrime is not just a problem for IT. It is a problem for business. And as this graphic illustrates, this is a screenshot from one of the pages from the FBI website. You can see traditional areas of investigation like civil rights, organized crime, white collar crime, but cybercrime is also now a major area of investigation for the FBI. So this is something that requires the attention of business executives. It's not just the domain of IT people. In fact, if business executives close their mind and don't accept accountability for this, if they just leave it up to IT people, then you're not going to have a complete package. You're not going to have complete coverage. Business executives have to have skin in the game. They have to accept ownership for this and work hand in hand with IT to make sure that we have a complete solution. A lot of times people feel like if I throw technology at the problem, if I throw money at the problem, then I'm taking care of it. But we forget that employees are the ones who are letting the bad guys in a lot of the time. And it's simply through education that we have to close that gap. We have to provide some education. We have to empower people so that they know what they're looking for and they can do a better job protecting themselves, their families, and yes, the business. So what we're going to do in this presentation, we're going to talk about a number of things that we can do to close simple gaps, to close some of the holes that we have. So as it relates to the talking points that we're going to have during this presentation, we're going to focus on a basic security checklist. So education is one of the points that we're going to cover in this presentation. We're also going to discuss adopting skepticism and vigilance. We're going to talk about incorporating two-step validation within some of the processes that we have within our companies. We're going to talk about the importance of password keepers and how simple they are to have and what a difference they can make for you as an individual and also for our companies. We're going to talk about notification of financial transactions. We're going to talk about improving and controlling document security. And as a last step in our process, we're going to talk about a solid data backup strategy. Okay, so socially engineered attacks, also known as business email compromise. These are the single largest means of companies being compromised today, of individuals losing thousands of dollars, of personal information being lost. It's not like you see in the movies. It's not, you know, it's not a dark room with people rolling through code, coming up with obscure cracks, finding obscure weaknesses. It is very simple and straightforward. The single largest means of companies being compromised today is through employees being co-opted through email. Employees doing things they shouldn't be doing as it relates to honoring executive requests, and employees clicking on links that they shouldn't be clicking on. So what the bad guys are preying upon is what we call socially engineered behavior. Things that are programmed into us as human beings, things that as human beings we do naturally. We are taught from a very young age to respect our elders, to respect executive leadership, to respect people in positions of authority. We're trained as employees that when executives in a company ask for certain things, that we are to jump through hoops and act on those requests very quickly. Some of the basic things that humans do: we're curious, we're afraid, we have temptations, and the bad guys play upon those things in the email that they send, hoping that they can get us to act on those emails. So sometimes these emails are very timely. For example, we're all going through the COVID-19 pandemic right now. There has been a huge surge in scams that are based upon COVID-19 requests, supposed requests from the federal government for information, supposed directives from the federal government not to do certain things, supposed requests from our own HR departments. On the right, I'm showing a graphic of a fake email that comes in from the help desk asking for information. I'm going to give you some tools to help sniff some of these things out and identify what's right and what's wrong. But ultimately, you're going to have to be skeptical and you're going to have to ask extra questions. All right, so one of the things that I want to establish as a foundation is some terms, and I have promised that we're not going to use geek speak. These terms have become so used in our everyday vocabulary that they've kind of moved from geek speak to everyday language. So I think everyone has heard of phishing, spelled with a PH. We know what phishing is. Normal fishing with an F, that essentially is where we have a hook and line and a fishing pole, and we throw out our fishing hook into the water and we wait and we see what bites, and we throw that out multiple times and we're just waiting to see what's going to bite that hook. Well, PH phishing, the technical version, is literally the same thing, except we're using email, we're using schemes, we're using fake websites to attract people, consumers, employees, to read the email and take action. And these emails are sent out to tens of thousands of millions of people, and they're all trying to get somebody, a handful of people, to click the link to take the action so that they can be scammed and fleeced of money, of information, whatever. Spear phishing is what we see as it relates to targeting specific fish or specific individuals. So spear fishing in the ocean, you've seen scuba divers with a spear gun in their hand and they're swimming in the water and they are targeting a specific fish, a specific breed of fish, if you will. Well, spear fishing in a corporate sense is where the bad guys are using email or tactics to target specific individuals in a company. Could be the CFO, could be people in accounting, it could be people in HR, it could be salespeople, and there will all be specific emails and specific tactics used to attack those people. So I'm going to show you some examples of tactics that are used, and the objective is to educate you so that you can spot these things, you can spot these attacks, and you can take the appropriate action. The graphic that I'm going to show you over here is that over about a 2-week period, I received all of the email that you see supposedly from Amazon. You can see Amazon Bonus Center, Amazon Card Service, Amazon Consumer Product Review. Who isn't a customer of Amazon these days? Whether you only buy one item a year or whether you exclusively shop Amazon, it's a very popular website and the bad guys know that. So they will put together a lot of emails purporting to be Amazon, and they'll send those out hoping to attract you. These are Amazon emails that I received over a 2-week period, and not one of them was legitimate. A 2-week period, and not one of them was legitimate. All of them were scam emails of some form or fashion. Okay. So before we can start to take a look at spotting bad email, we have to understand a little bit about the email, the anatomy of an email address. So a typical email address is made up of the username, the @ symbol, and a domain name. So the username, in this case, I'm showing J Huffaker. Sometimes for personal email, you'll see things like Spotted Rabbit or, just crazy, silly, funny things. But the @ sign always will separate the username from the domain name. In a corporate setting, the domain is typically identifying the company or the organization. For personal email, it's identifying things like yahoo.com, gmail.com, outlook.com, sources where individuals may have individual email hosted. So you're going to need to pay attention to username, @ domain, pay attention to the domain so that we can figure out, is this a domain that I recognize, or is this a domain that I don't recognize? Therefore, I need to be very careful. In Outlook, this is what an email address may look like. And I'm going to talk about Microsoft Outlook. I know there are other email solutions out there on the market. However, Microsoft Outlook is the dominant corporate email client in the United States and probably in the world. Microsoft Outlook has over 90%, over 95% market share as it relates to email client. Yes, there are other email clients out there, but I don't have time this morning to focus on those, so we're just going to focus on Outlook. So with Outlook, one of the things that it does is it takes an email address, which can be very long and unwieldy to look at, and it will put a pretty display name on it. So this is showing Justin Huffaker as my display name, and then it's showing the email address. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to these triangle brackets. And we're going to talk about these triangle brackets in the context of employees and individuals that work within the same company, and individuals and business contacts and personal contacts that are outside the company. So with Outlook, if I receive an email and it's got triangle brackets in it, that means that that email has come from outside the company, outside the employee community of people who have email addresses like me. If the email name, if the display name shows up just like this and there's no triangle brackets, that means it's coming from an email sender within the company. So that'll be important to us as we start to work with some of these fake email addresses coming up. All right. So something else that we need to pay attention to is that character substitution is used a lot of the time to trick us. So if I'm working in a typical day, and for those of us who work in corporate environments, you know that it's very busy, it's very fast paced. We've got deadlines, we've got reminders popping up, we've got the phone ringing, we got people knocking at our door, we got people stopping by our cube, whatever. There's a lot of distractions. So if I receive an email from someone and I just glance at it and I see, oh, it's from just J Huffaker at datamaxtexas.com. That's a good email. Just by glancing at it, I say that's great. But what if I received an email from J Huffaker at datamaxtexas.com, where an O is in place of the A? Do you think I would be able to spot that if I wasn't looking for it and I was just quickly glancing at email? You might be able to see it easily here, But what if the font is smaller and it's presented in a font that doesn't easily display the difference between an A and an O? The top one is a legitimate email. The bottom one is from an email person who is spoofing me. Spoofing means faking or pretending. They're pretending to be me. So if you replied to the top email address, you would be replying to me. If you replied to the bottom email address, who knows who you would be replying to. Another thing to be vigilant for is the usage of lowercase l, capital I, or the number 1. So if I look, if my company name was abcllp.com, you can see that visually there is no visual difference at all between those two email addresses. In some fonts on our computers, the lowercase L and the uppercase I are virtually indistinguishable. In fact, they are indistinguishable. And then if you have the number 1, you can see the difference, but it's very close, still very close. And if I come over here to a smaller font presentation, it's even more challenging to see the difference between these 3 character representations. The top one may be legitimate, the bottom 2 may be spoofs or tricks from somebody trying to get me to do something. Another one is lowercase o and 0. Just glance at it. Can you see the difference? If you're looking for it, yes. If you're just glancing at it, maybe not. Here's a smaller indication. So again, some of the things that we're going to look for as we start to be a little more vigilant as it relates to email that is not legitimate. All right, now we're going to start getting into looking at some links and paying attention to the email we receive. All right, so this is an email that I put together to send out to contacts that I have, professional contacts. And there are times where I write blogs that go up on our corporate website that are educational in nature to help people with various things about technology. So in this case, I'm getting ready to send out a remote work readiness assessment blog post. I've got a presentation link, which has presentation text with the web link underlying it. And you can see that the web link underlying it right here is more complicated than the simple display. But then in the sub bullet below, I'm presenting the actual link. So if I were to hover, if I were to take my mouse, and as you can see my my marker, my icon moving, if I were to hover over that, then Outlook would pop a window just like this, and it would show you what the underlying link is. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, when you start to hover over links, I want you to take your fingers away from the click buttons on your mouse. I've reached an age where my fingers aren't as steady as they used to be, and sometimes they do things on their own, like click, that I don't want them to do. So what you've got to do is take your hand and hold your mouse at the back and just guide it so that your fingers are at the sides of the mouse and not over the buttons at all. And when you hover, that's when that window will pop up and you can see. So I can review this link and I can see it comes from datamaxtexas.com. You ask, we answer. How can I prepare my company for working remotely in light of a disaster? Seems like a legitimate link. And a developing best practice when sharing links is if you're going to share a presentation link, also below that, share the actual link so that people who don't want to click can actually copy and paste into a browser and have a little bit more security that way. So what I'm going to show you over here is an example of a bad email. And this one was successfully utilized to inject CryptoLocker, CryptoLocker being software that locks up all the data on a network. And it was using a Datamax URL to do that. So if I look at this and I look at this URL, datamax-lr.com, The interesting thing here is that is an older domain name used by Datamax. We used to use datamax-lr.com. It's not what we use anymore. We've moved over to datamaxinc.com, but this was an old email. So it came in from Michelle, and note the triangle brackets. And although this looks legitimate, if I were to hover over that using the hover tactic to reveal what's underneath, then I can see that this link that's being displayed is not the link that's revealed underneath. And that's an indication of a trick. That's an indication that something is not right and you should avoid it. Okay, in this case, CryptoLocker was introduced and it locked up data on a company network. Okay. Some more phishing, and this is using Amazon as the temptation. So this is an Amazon email. Some people love little spy cameras apparently, and the invitation is to click this link and view the spy camera. And you know, it's an inexpensive way that you can spy on people apparently, and for some people that's an interesting thing to do. So I see that this email supposedly comes in from Amazon Product Highlight. I see my triangle brackets indicating it's come from outside the company network. So what I want to do is look at that email address. Here is the username, amazon.product.highlight. Here's the @ sign. But then the domain name is gravbrotfamilydental.com. Why in the world would Amazon be sending me something with gravbrotfamilydental.com? So that's an indication just from the email address that this is a fake email and should not be clicked on. If I use my hover technique like we previously discussed, if I hover over the link, then this box will pop and I will see here that it's a link to pi.gravbrotfamilydental.com. Essentially, it is not legitimate and it should be avoided. Okay. So this is an example of spear phishing targeting sales staff, and this is a very, very sophisticated email. This one was of particular interest to me because there was a time in my life when I lived in San Diego and I worked for the city of San Diego as a lifeguard. So this comes in to me and it is a invitation to respond to an RFQ for the city of San Diego. And as a sales organization, I know that these things are of interest and to not just Datamax, but to any company that with sales organizations. And you're going to want to see what is it that we could respond and participate in if we wanted to with the city of San Diego. So part of my investigation was to look at the email address, rmmccarville@sandiego.gov. Okay, that looks legitimate. .gov is commonly used for governmental agencies. PDF says state of California.pdf. I look over here, Richard McCarville, that is consistent with the email address. I even went to the step of pulling up LinkedIn and looking on LinkedIn, and I did confirm that there is a Richard McCarville working for the city of San Diego in their purchasing department. So far it checks out. I click reply, and I want you to remember there's a difference between clicking reply and clicking send. Clicking reply simply means put me in a position to create a reply. Clicking send means take action. So clicking reply is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be useful for investigation. And in fact, when I click reply, then I see that my reply address doesn't resemble at all the email address that was presented to me when the email came in. That is very slick. How many people pay attention after you've already reviewed the email address of an incoming email to when you click reply, do you go back and review the email address to make sure that it's still legitimate? Very sophisticated. So you can see, although RM McCarville is repeated, the name after the @ sign, it's no longer sandiego.gov, it's san-diiago.us, fake email address. So if I were to begin a dialogue using this email address, someone faking or purporting to be Richard McCarville would conduct a conversation with me, hoping that they could get me to ship a bunch of product on a fake PO, the PO purporting to be from the city of San Diego. And essentially I would ship all that product and I would never recover it. That product would be shipped to a temporary, one of these temp storage locations with a drive up garage door, and those things are checked on a regular basis, and the bad guys roll up, see what's been delivered, load up their truck and drive away. That's how these scams work. Okay. Here is spear phishing targeting the HR department, targeting people that manage personnel, the CFO or finance. So this one comes around tax time every single year. And what I'm going to show you here, these are two examples of language that was successfully used to induce companies to respond to this scam. So I'm going to read it word for word. It says, "Hi, I want you to send me the list of W-2 copy of employees' wages and tax statement for 2016. I need them in PDF file type. Kindly prepare the lists and email them to me ASAP. Regards, Richard Jones." In this case, although the name has been changed, Richard Jones was either the owner or the CEO of the company, and he sent this to HR and said, "Send me all these W-2s." Well, the person in HR who's busy may think it's kind of an odd request, but hey, that's the owner of the company's business. They attach the PDF with all the W-2s and send it off. What happens next is it does not go to the owner or the CEO. It goes to a third-party company or third-party person outside the organization. Those W-2s are then used to generate fraudulent tax documents. They always generate a return. That return is then sent to a bank account. That bank account is cleaned out on a daily basis with funds transferred to offshore accounts. And the terrible thing about this is it's not discovered in real time. It's generally not discovered until several weeks later when employees really receive their W-2s, file their tax returns, and then they're notified by the IRS that they have filed a duplicate return, and they're in trouble. There's trouble because now they're tied up with the IRS, and now they have to untangle the situation. They're not going to get their return, and it's a big mess. So next. All right, so this is a real-time scam. And what I want to highlight here is that this is something that came into me on my iPhone. And we read a lot of mail on our phones and portable devices these days. So it's very common that we'll see these things outside of Outlook. Devices are everywhere. So I'm going to make a note to you of this external language right here. Pay attention to that. And we're going to talk about that coming up. But here's an email. It comes in. David Rhodes is the president of the Dallas office of Datamax. Not only do I work with him every day, he's a friend of mine, but he sends me an email. And he says, Justin, are you in the office? So I'm at lunch with some associates and I see that I'm getting an email from David Rhodes, but I also notice that it's tagged external. Again, we're going to get to that. So I've seen this scam before. I know how to recognize these things. So I went ahead and clicked reply and I said, yes, what's up? Now I also look down here and I see that the email address is data.executives222@gmail.com. That's a problem. I've never seen that email address from David Rhodes. I know that's not his corporate email address. I've even seen personal email from him, and I know he doesn't have an email address like that. But I'm deciding to play along just to see what happens. And what he does, what the phony David Rhodes does, is he says, here is what I want you to do for me. And he proceeds to ask me to go and buy gift cards for Home Depot for an employee appreciation event. And he says, I want $500 face value. And the next step is that he wants me to scrape off the back. He wants me to take a picture of the PIN code. And then he wants me to email or text those photos to him. What happens next is that this person purporting to be my work associate goes to Home Depot and buys $3,000 worth of merchandise. Well, the employee then will file an expense report or will follow up with David Rhodes later in the day and say, hey, I got these cards. What do you want me to do with them? And David Rhodes will say, what do you mean? I didn't tell you to go buy gift cards. And now we got a problem. Somebody's out money, the company's out money, we're not going to reimburse the employee. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's a bad situation that can be avoided. This last screenshot is just, I didn't do anything. I dropped the conversation. You can see this person's following up with me to see what's going on. So pay attention to email addresses. When you click reply, a lot of times you can see what's happening. And I also want to make sure that you know that this gift card scam is circulating. You do have to watch out for it. All right. So every single day, scam email is coming into our corporate networks. And, you know, employees are receiving emails from their banks. They're receiving email from their utilities. They're receiving email from people they do business with. I have seen scams for every single one of these companies purporting to be this company with gift cards or some kind of offer. Here's an example of a delivery notification from UPS. Hey, we've been unable to deliver your package. Click here so that we can make sure we have your right delivery address. But if I review, why in the world is UPS using an email address with oilmandate.com as the domain name? So I realize all of a sudden this is a fake email. Use the training that I'm providing to help yourself be more vigilant about scams of this nature. All right, here's another example of a scam using LinkedIn. Somebody, a contact of mine on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a tool very prevalent in corporate America. Their LinkedIn account has been compromised and they have sent out using LinkedIn what appears to be a great business opportunity. Well, there was something about this email that made me suspicious. It's not the typical conversation that I have with this contact, so I wanted to dig into it a little bit. I didn't want to click on this link. What I would normally advise is if you get this kind of an email from an associate on LinkedIn, don't click the link. Instead, call the person or open up an email on your side and send it to that person, or do not communicate through LinkedIn, because if somebody's LinkedIn account is compromised, you're just going to be communicating with the people who compromised the account. So step outside of the communication sequence reach out and say, hey, did you do this? Did you intend to send this? You might be surprised to hear them say, holy cow, no, I didn't. Something must be going wrong. But on a device that was insulated from attack, I went ahead and clicked the link, and I see that it's coming from a domain that has nothing to do with my friend's company. And if I were to enter my data here, this company would be harvesting my email address and my password for Office 365, which there's no telling what they can do with it once they have that information. All right. So here's the external. The idea with external is we're providing another means of helping people understand that email is coming in from outside the company. So in this case, you can see that there's a lot of companies that have adopted this practice. Caution, external message, external email in big red type. Caution, this email originated outside the organization. So the idea is, if I get an email supposedly coming from David Rhodes, remember the previous example that I got on my phone, and it's got external in it, the question is, for an employee, why would I be receiving an email from David Rhodes, or from my company president, or from my CEO, or from my CFO, or my controller, or my HR department? Why does it say external? Why am I being warned that this is an external message when it's coming from someone theoretically that's in the same company as me? It's a clue. It's a warning. Be skeptical. Watch out. This could be a problem. The key here is step outside of the communication, call directly, and find out, is this legitimate? All right. So one of the things we've got to do is implement employee training. I'm providing training today, hoping that people will get this information and start protecting themselves. There is software training that you can buy that will start to train employees, and we can see, if I look and I track progress using the tools inside of this training, I might have this many people responding to attacks before I begin my training regimen. But at the end of the training regimen, I have dramatically lowered the number of people who are susceptible to attacks of this nature. That's a very good thing. Spending a little bit of money that's non-technical and educating my employees, I've had a dramatic increase in the amount of security that I've just provided my company. Okay. Something else that sometimes I think we forget is controlling simple information leaks that exist in every company. You know, most companies have copiers, most companies have printers, and it's very common to see documents just laying in output trays like this, laying on the copier like this. Somebody will make a print. You know, they have to walk to go get it. So they make their print. Next, you know, before they can go get their stuff, a phone call comes in or somebody stops by. So they forget that the documents have been printed, and there they sit all day. Well, employees throughout the day will stop by, and these documents that are in the output tray will just pile up and accumulate all around the copier for anyone to come and get. So just imagine if I had printed medical information or payroll information and it was sitting there, anybody could come by and get this. Anyone who's worked late at a company that has a cleaning crew, you have seen the cleaning crew at night walking out of the building with trash bags full of documents. Well, if they're walking out with documents that haven't been shredded, then there are people that will go through dumpsters looking to get that information so that they can use the information in those documents to hack networks, to trick people, to gain entry into information or private data, financial data for a company. You'd be surprised the kind of information that goes to a dumpster. It's not shredded. All somebody has to do is dumpster dive, cut through trash bags, and they have found thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars worth of potential information. There's some software, there are tools you can get from your information providers, from the companies that you get your copiers from. In this case, Datamax provides copiers. We also provide software that will help you make sure that documents aren't actually printed, converted into paper documents until you're ready for them. So it can be a very worthwhile investment to make sure that the output devices within your company only print documents when people are ready to pick them up and use them. These are some screenshots from a company, a large medical device company that I work with in the Fort Worth area. And you can see the kind of employee education that they engage in. They have wall posters, they have screensavers, they have posters in break rooms. They make a lot of money based on patents and the medical proprietary knowledge that they have. They secure all their print jobs and they invest in educating the employee community to make sure that their proprietary information is protected. Third-party breaches. So think about this. Despite you personally doing everything you can to protect yourself, you can still have your most private information released by third parties who are being attacked and exploited. So I refer back to the 2017 Equifax breach. Equifax is one of the top 3 credit reporting agencies in the United States, along with TransUnion and I don't recall the other one offhand, but if you open credit cards, if you refinance your house, if you buy a house, if you do a bank loan, those 3 credit reporting agencies will have very sensitive personal information about you. And in 2017, a very significant data breach occurred with Equifax. Nearly half of the American population was affected. Has it been cleaned up? Yes, Equifax is still in business. That security hole has been closed, but all of the information is still out there on the dark web, circulating with the bad guys, being bought, being sold, being used to exploit today. Just because a company closes a security breach, if your information has been released, you can still be impacted. So when you see a notification of a security breach by a company you do business with, you need to find out if you were affected. You need to find out what information was released. So I took that step with Equifax, and lo and behold, I was notified based on the information provided. We believe that your personal information may have been impacted by this incident. Thank you very much. I had just refinanced my home at that time, take advantage of some interest rates, social security number, bank references, all kinds of information released to bad guys so that they could do whatever they wanted to with it. In this case, I signed up for credit monitoring, considered freezing my credit status. Very disruptive to me personally, and these kind of things with a third-party institution can be very disruptive to you personally. All right, something I recommend is implementing transaction notifications on smartphones. I have an Apple smartphone. There's a feature called the wallet. There may very well be something similar available on the Android system, but whether it's a wallet notification, banks and credit cards will allow you to get text and email notification of transactions that occur so that you can see them and be notified in real time when your credit cards, when your bank accounts are having funds moving in or out. So in this case, I'm showing you I had just had lunch at a restaurant, Heart 8 Barbecue here in Dallas, 2601. In real time, as the company ran my credit card, I was able to see that that transaction occurred. Mentally, I could verify, yes, that's accurate. Here's an example of a text notification from another credit card that I have, and I'm seeing that bank account, that bank account is being debited, and I can approve those things in real time. I strongly recommend that as a step for you so that you can be notified in real time when your financial accounts are being used. You know, I had just implemented this. I put it on my iPad as well. I'm laying in bed reading at night, and I see a transaction come across from $1,400 for Best Buy, and I realize I didn't do anything with Best Buy. I got on the phone with American Express with Best Buy. It turns out somebody was trying to buy $1,400 TV. My credit card number had been stolen. So I was able to prevent that and save myself a lot of anxiety because I acted on it in real time. So some other things we need to do: password resets, complex passwords. As somebody who works with clients to manage technology, I know that passwords are probably the single most complained about item from the end user community. And I apologize in advance if I have clients on this call for requiring that you have strong passwords, for requiring password changes. But we've got to have complex passwords. There are still people out there that use very simple passwords, and they're easy to guess, and you can be hurt when people guess those passwords. So let's say I decide to have a more complex password, and if I were a Cowboys fan and I wanted to celebrate the last time that they won their Super Bowl, I might make my password Cowboys 1996. And I might think, well, I want to make it easy on myself. I'm just going to use that same password with every place that I do business. Problem is if somebody got this password as part of that Equifax data breach, not only would they have that password, they would know where I do business. And they could take that password and just go right down the line and start making transactions and hurting me financially because I got lazy and use the same password everywhere I did business. You cannot do that. What you need to do is adopt a password keeper. I happen to use a password keeper called mSecure. This is a couple of screenshots of the way it works, but I can have very complex passwords. Here's an example of a complex password. I can have that password, and I can have different passwords for everywhere I need a password. And it's very easy for me to use that password with different websites. This is available to me on my mobile devices and on my desktop, so I can dramatically improve my security just by using complex passwords. And I do that because I'm empowered to do that with my password keeper. So mSecure is not the only password keeper that's out there. You could look at LastPass by LogMeIn. You could look at Dashlane, Firefox, the browser, Mozilla. They have started to do a lot as it relates to individual security. And I recommend that you take a look at the Firefox Mozilla website. Where LastPass and Dashlane and mSecure are paid options, the Firefox option may be free. And it looks to be very solid. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Ransomware. Ransomware is where the data on a network is locked up, and then you receive a communication that you need to pay to have it unlocked. It can happen. Even with a good defense, it can happen. You know, we all think that spam filters are going to cure everything. They don't. There's a fine line when you use spam filters. If you turn it up too tight, then you lose legitimate emails. If you make it too loose, you're getting spammed like crazy, and you've got bad email coming through. So you've got to have a data backup strategy. For businesses, the best strategy is to have it automated, offsite, cloud backup, cloud-based. It is unacceptable for a business to use an external hard drive and manually back up their data and manually take that offsite. It is not acceptable for a business to do that. For an individual, again, automated offsite cloud-based data backup. For an individual, it's okay to use an external hard drive. We're not talking about a business, it's an individual. It's not the best, but it's okay. All right, protecting yourself and others. You remember the first slide, we talked about having accountability. You have to understand that you are a target. You have to be suspicious. Two-step verbal confirmation anytime. And we have to train this into our companies. We have to educate end users. We have to have two-step verbal confirmation. An email comes in from the president of the company and says, give me all your W-2. You can't respond to that anymore. You have to pick up the phone and call. You have to get up from your desk and go knock on the president's door and say, excuse me, ma'am, did you ask for this information? Believe me, as uncomfortable as you may be, if that's uncomfortable for you, it'll be a lot better that you took that step and went and asked, and that gave that person the opportunity to say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't, because you will save a lot of pain by doing that. If you don't have the comfort, if you're intimidated by talking to an business executive, escalate to your manager and say, hey, manager, I just got this email. Would you call and check? Two-step verbal confirmation. From whether it's W-2s, whether it's I need a $250,000 bank transfer done, two-step verbal confirmation. All right, so the basic security checklist, education, you've just taken the first step. Find out how your IT support team can help with continued education. If you have an internal support team, what can they do? If you have a third-party support, what plans do they have to help educate you? If you're a sole proprietor, pay attention to educational information on the internet that can help you do a better job of protecting yourself. We've got to be skeptical. We've got to be vigilant. You've got to watch for these things. You just can't click links anymore. You have to pay attention. Two-step validation, we just covered that. Password keeper, we've got to have complex passwords. We can't do password duplication anymore. I strongly recommend notification of financial transactions. And improve and control document security. Don't print documents that you're not ready to pick up immediately. Shred documents before they go outside. If you have questions about that, follow up with me after this presentation. I can help. And make sure you have a solid data backup strategy. So we've got just a couple of minutes for Q&A. If you want to reach out to me after this, I've provided contact information. Stephanie, are there any questions?
We do have one question that came in, and that one says, is there a way to preview a link or email address on a phone email before clicking it? So I think that was referencing how you said to hover over on a desktop, but is there a way to verify that on a phone setting?
I'm not aware of that on a phone. So with a phone, you would want to remember there's a difference between clicking reply and then clicking send. If you click reply, then you can look at the underlying email and give it some visual scrutiny. If you have any question about an email, I recommend that you call that person directly using a known email or using a known phone number, not the phone number that's within the email. And if your company has decided to adopt external, then you can also use that external if you have questions about something that supposedly came from an internal email. It's a little bit of a complex question, but there are things you can do to help vet that information.
Okay, great. And then I think for the link aspect on that one, you said just copying and pasting it is better than clicking on the link.
Yeah, and if it's from a mobile phone, you have to be careful because you don't have the same copy and paste options as you do from a workstation. You want to make sure that if you're on a workstation, you hover over that link so that you can visually see the underlying link and review it, and then you can make a decision about whether it's safe to click that link or not.
All right, that's great. Great advice. So maybe just wait till you get on your desktop if you're not sure.
Exactly. I think that's a good plan.
Perfect. Well, that looks like all the questions we have submitted. So I would like to go ahead and thank Justin and Datamax for taking the time from your schedule to provide the insight and awareness for our business community to help us be proactive in protecting information and prepare for the future. So again, on behalf of the Longview Chamber, we appreciate your participation. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available online. And for those of you on the line, you will receive an email later today with a link to listen to it again and share with others, as well as the PDF slide deck for you to have all this information to reference. So thank you, Justin and Datamax, and that is it for now.
Bye-bye.